I've been making these scrappy little stuffed animals inspired by my recent trip to the UK, and one of my viewers asked if I could show how I made this little fox. But I've already made the fox, so I can't show you how I made her. But I still have some other animals that I'd like to make, and it's basically the same process for all of them. And in this video, I'd like to show you how I made these little black cats. And they were inspired by this clouder that I encountered when I was visiting Oxford. And this seems like a good time of year to be making some little black cats, don't you think? I've been designing all of these little animals, thinking about what are the deciding characteristics. So you know this is a bunny because it has really big ears. And the fox has smaller pointy ears and big wide points on the side of her face. And then the rest of the face is really simple. The bodies are also really simple, just a simple oval shape. And the fox is going to be two-tone. There's going to be some brown areas and some white areas. And it also gets a big fluffy tail. My bunny, on the other hand, is getting a neck. Actually, that's a really important point. All the animals need a neck. I'll explain later. And is going to be wearing a sailor suit, so the body is just split in half for the legs and just some simple arms and legs there. And the fox also has simple legs, but her arms are going to be a little bit more elaborate because she's going to be holding a jar of jam in one hand and a mug of beer in the other hand. And if you're curious about why she's holding those objects, you can watch my video about the rabbit holes, and I'll leave a link to that in the description box and at the end of this video as well. So for my black cats, I've gathered together a selection of mostly black fabric and some not black fabric. I don't have any fully black fabric, and I think it's more fun. I'm going to think about what I want my cats to look like. Cats also have pointy ears, and then they just have a simple oval face. My cats are also going to get an oval shaped body and some simple limbs as well. Now, I'm not going to use this drawing as a template because I want all of my cats to be individual. So I'm just going to cut those shapes out directly from the cloth without using any drawings or lines at all. And I folded this piece of cloth in half, and I'm cutting out the front and the back body at the same time. And I'm not really worried about the patterns or the designs, and I'm just checking the cloth to see if there's any more left where I can cut out other parts as well. And I think I've got enough left to cut out the head too. So I'm going to start with the neck so that I don't forget to include the neck, and the neck will just make it easier for me to attach the head to the body when it comes time to do that. I'll cut up the side, and then I'll make the ears, the little pointy ears at the top, and then come down around the other side. Now, I am not worried at all about whether this is proportionally correct, whether both sides are symmetrical. I do want the front and back to match because they need to be sewn together, and it's easier if they match. And oh, I noticed that I didn't quite have enough fabric for the ears there. And that is not a big deal at all. I can just sew a little patch on the top there to finish off the ears, and then I don't have to worry about that at all. And there you can see how the neck is going to tuck into the body and give me a place to sew it on. So now I'm going to look at what's left of that tiny scrap. And so now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out a piece for the tail. And this one I've also folded in half so that I only have to sew up one side of the tail. And then after that, I'm going to see if there's anything left after that. And I don't have enough left to cut out feet from this, but I could cut out one foot. And then I'm going to switch to some of my other cloth, and why not a white foot? Some black cats have white body parts, so that'll be fun. So I don't need to use the same fabric for all of the parts of my cat, but I can if I have them. And I'll cut out 2 pieces of cloth for each of the paws, and then once I've cut out all the bits, I'm going to start sewing the pieces together, and I'm starting here with the head. So I'm just using an overcast stitch with a dark color thread that blends in. It doesn't really matter. And I'm going around and around and around the outside edge, making sure that I catch the whole thing. Now I'm going to leave an opening at the top there, and that's where I'm going to stuff the stuffing into the head. And I'm going to use a stick to make sure that I get stuffing well down into the neck. And once I've got the head stuffed the way I like it, I'll sew up the opening. Now next I'm going to move on to the paws. I'm not going to use the same kind of stuffing. I'm going to use this quilt batting or quilt wadding. And I've sandwiched the front and the back with the quilt batting on the inside. And I'm just stitching around and around and around with an overcast stitch. And I'll do all the paws in the same way. And now the tail. Now the tail, I've just folded it in half. And I've got another piece of that quilt batting that I'm sewing inside so that the tail won't be too floppy and will stand up straight. And again, just overcast stitch around and around and around. And once I've got my paws and my tail finished, I'm going to stitch them onto the inside of one of the body pieces. These are going to be the leg paws, and I'm just sewing them on with a running stitch along the bottom edge of the body, and then I'll put the tail on the side. And then once I've done that, I can sew the two body parts together, and I think it's a little bit less fiddly than if I were trying to attach the tail and the paws at the same time that I was sewing the two body parts together. And I'm going to do this like I did the head. I'm going to go all the way around, but I'm going to leave an opening on one side. And when I get to the head, I will insert that. And you can do all the body parts like this, but it is a little bit fiddly to hold on to that head and then sew all three pieces together. And now you might be wondering why I haven't made any upper paws. Well, this cat, her name is Anne, is a rather literary cat, and she's going to be holding a couple of books. And they're very specific books that relate to my visit to Oxford. The first one is Unwell Women, and the other one is Kafka's The Castle. And I will be making a video that will explain why I've chosen those two books, and I'll tell you about my time in Oxford as well. And here's the second of my cats. Her name is Alice, after Alice in Wonderland. And yes, of course, there's a story to that as well. And she's going to be holding on to these playing cards, but I'm going to attach these in a different way than I did with the books. And first of all, let me show you how I made them. Basically, I just wrote on a piece of cloth with a Sharpie marker. Now, if you live in the UK, you probably know what this sign means. But for the rest of the world, in the UK, they have little reflective lights on their roads that they call cat's eyes. And when the roads are resurfaced, the cat's eyes are removed. And they have signs that tell you about that. So my daughter said she would not forgive me if I didn't include this sign in my piece that was inspired by my trips. And I'm going to attach playing cards and also my cat's eyes remove sign using a product called Fusible Webbing. Now there are different brands. This one happens to be called Steam-A-Seam, but there's also Heat and Bond and Bond-A-Web and a variety of different ones. The nice thing about the Steam-A-Seam is that when I peel off this backing paper, there's a slightly sticky surface, so I can move it around and place it on the back of my piece of cloth that I want to stick down, and I can move that around. I can take it up and move it around, and once I've decided where I want it, it's not going to move. And then once I've decided where to place it, I'm just going to give it a quick iron so that it's stuck down. I'll cut out the shape that I want. I'll place it where I want it to finally live, and then I will follow the instructions and iron it with steam. The pink cloth is a press cloth. I should have done that in the first place as well. It's a good idea when you're using this stuff to have something between the webbing and your iron so it doesn't get mucked up. Now that the playing cards are attached, I can add the stuffing here and then close up that hole. And then I'm going to stitch down her arm because I want it to have a little bit more dimension than it would have if I had fused it down. And there you go. There are my two little cats, partially finished. And there will be two others that will be joining these two, and their names are Lucy and Eowyn. And they all have significance to Oxford, and I will tell you about those in one of my future videos. I hope you've liked this one and that I will see you again soon. Bye for now.